Right, so here we have cucumbers, and they're starting to grow up the trellis, but they're going to need some help. And so all you want to do is just kind of weave them in and out of the trellis a bit, so they can get upwards, right? Because you want them to get lots of sun, to stay dry. You know, they want to be upright. They just need a little help. Okay, and now to give them some help, to get nicer cucumbers, to get them earlier, what you can do is you can cut off the shoots off the bottom, as well as the little tiny cukes down near the bottom of the plant, so that it has more energy to grow, and thus will provide more cucumbers later. Sometimes it's hard to cut them off, you know, you feel like you're getting rid of cucumbers, but it's actually going to help the plant. They're going to be happy. You can twist them off or cut them off. Just be careful not to cut the stem, the main stem. And you'll see that they'll be able to produce earlier, because it takes a lot of energy to produce fruit. And if it's not a big, strong plant with a good root system, and it's trying to produce this big cucumber, it's not going to be good. The plant's going to weaken, and after it produces those first few cucumbers, it's going to be out of strength and then not produce much. So you take a little bit away and then get a lot more cukes later. And this last cucumber plant got really messed into the beans, so I'm going to separate him and take off his, what we call suckers, which are just new heads. And now I'm just gonna, you don't have to weave him all the way up, right? Because he's so big, you can just start weaving him near the top. And when you get to the top of the trellis, you just go over the bar and then back down. Cucumbers require a lot of food, so you can't skimp on your bed prep at the beginning for cucumbers. They require high levels of potassium, high levels of nitrogen, so lots of compost, lots of fertilizer, you know, right from the beginning. They're really greedy eaters. So if you're getting fruit that's turning yellow and not producing, meaning it's not turning into a cucumber, but it's getting yellow, shriveling up and dying, that could just be lack of potassium, lack of food for them. So that could be a sign that you just didn't feed them enough. And as they're growing, you can continue to, you know, put a trench in, add some fertilizer to continue to feed them, so you continue to get cucumbers. And I feel the best way to start them is to start them in a pot. And the bigger the pot, the better. They just don't germinate readily out in the field. So it's better to start them indoors by the window, one seed per, get really good germination, get a nice strong plant, and then plant them with the correct spacing. And for these, you're looking at about 10 to 12 inches apart in a single row, directly under your trellis. And the easiest, best trellis for them is netting, because it doesn't require a lot of work. You just, kind of weave them in and out, and that works really, really nicely. One thing that you can do to help those starts when they just start growing is to cover them with a little bit of row cover for a couple of days, maybe a week, because cucumbers suffer from transplant shock, and that's when a plant is being moved from its pot or tray and into soil. And different plants, suffer more or less. Cucumbers are one that suffer the most. And because they're better in pots, that combination makes them a little bit harder to grow. But to reduce that shock, the best thing is to make sure your seedlings are well watered regularly. They're watered before they go in, that the bed is moist when it goes in, and that you disturb it as little as possible. Just make your hole, put the cucumber in, plant it, press the soil down lightly, and you're done, and leave it alone. And then the row cover can help too. That will just protect it for a little while until it feels comfortable. You take the row cover off and it should be good. If they're dying, then you can just try again. So you can, have a few starts. And this is good for cucumbers too, always having starts, because they burn out after a while, right? They're gonna come up, go down, they're gonna produce cucumbers, and they're gonna be really high quality, and then the quality is gonna go down. So you can continue to plant. So if your first ones die, hopefully you have some more that you can put in. Now, if they're not just shriveling up and dying, but they're actually getting cut off at the ground, which is pretty common, that's cutworm. So for cutworm, the way to protect it is you can find the cutworm by either just disturbing the soil and looking for this little caterpillar that's curled up during the day, because they feed at night. And they just go a little bit, a couple millimeters under the soil to protect themselves during the day. And if you find them, you can kill them. Another way is to put a ring, like you're cutting a cup, and you put a ring so he can't get to the plant until it gets bigger. Because once it gets bigger, the cutworm's really not going to do any damage. And diatomaceous earth sprinkled around the plant will also discourage cutworms. And that's just a natural product made from deposits from ancient oceans, and it's very uncomfortable for bugs. So those are good ways to prevent that. Now, once you get your cucumbers growing and they're trellised, how do you have really good quality cucumbers? Well, you've already done the soil, you've done everything you can. Now what you need to do is water them regularly. And if you have drip on a timer, that's great, because you can water them every day. If not, you just want to make sure the soil doesn't dry out. Because if you've ever had a bitter cucumber, that's from the soil drying out and it not getting regular water. So regular water is going to keep that quality up and keep the cucumbers coming too. You can have a very, this small little section of cucumbers, will be way more than my family can eat, and we eat a lot of cucumbers. But that's going to require water. They're very thirsty. And that's going to produce a really nice cucumber, right? And there's varieties that, aren't going to produce any seed, right? You see that when there's no seed inside, it's going to be really, really sweet. Perfectly sweet, no bitterness. And there's two types of cucumbers I like, which are what I call picklers, right? Which are the ones that you make pickles out of, but they're not just for pickles. They taste wonderful, and you can eat them raw and put them in salads. And then also the bigger slicers. Those are the ones that look more like your normal cucumber. I like to grow both for variety. So when you're harvesting cucumbers, these are one of these things, just like zucchini, that you just need to go in there, daily, if not every other day, and go and pull the cucumbers off. Because there's two things are going to happen if you don't do that regularly. One is the cucumbers are going to get huge, and then they're not going to taste as good. You may start getting seeds because they grow really, really fast. You know, you go in the garden one day and you go there a few days later and suddenly you have zucchini that are like this big, or cucumbers, which is huge, like footballs. And so you don't want that. The other thing it's going to do is going to make the plant produce less, right? When you keep up on the harvesting, it signals the plant to continue to produce. And that's true of zucchini as well. They're both like that. So you just want to continue to harvest regularly. If you can't do it daily, then at least every other day, and just take whatever's ready.